Sorry, have you live streamed yet?
Yes.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live coding session. So, for today, we're going to be picking up from where we stopped last week. Do we have any questions or concerns from last week's class or in the course of going through the material? Hello, can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes,
Okay. All right. So, in the absence of any, okay. Oluwapelumi, yes, please. Are you saying yes to you can hear me or yes, you have a question? Please unmute yourself and respond. All right, then we'll just get into what we have for today. All right, so in our last class, we're working with the food production data sets, right, across African countries. And some of the things that we did was to look at total food production in the last 10 years. We talked about the importance of trying out different graphs so that you get um, a good perspective of your data. You get to understand the data from different perspectives, right? And then because of course is the exploratory phase, right? It's not the explanatory phase where you're trying to communicate your insights. It's exploratory, so you're allowed to try all sorts of charts, right? So and then we looked at total production by country. We looked at the average production. We're able to see some interesting um, outliers. We're able to see some interesting values for the various countries. and the ranges in which the average value, like average country production, typically falls. And then if you observe here, we have a situation where because of the values of the very large country, because of the very large production values, so it's a bit difficult to like track the rest of this. And so you can use log you can scale it up, right? Using this so that it's easier for you to see and analyze the various data points. Okay. And we looked at total production in the last 10 years. Looked at this using the stacked bar chart. We also used the line graph to look at it across years, all years. We used this as well, the stacked area chart. So I'm just going to point out something about the stacked area chart, right? So they are like two kinds of area charts, basically. The ones where the charts are overlaying, right? And then the stacked ones. And so this one is this is the stacked area chart by default, right? If you specify the color in this Alt-A charts what function, right? If you specify the color as part of the encoding, then by default you're going to get the stacked area chart. So now one thing to point out from here is that stacked area chart is like basically the combination of all crops, right? So like what percentage of crops make up like the total production for the year 1961, right? So this is giving us, so we start with a base of 0, right? And then we get that of the width. And then the top value for this is the wheat. Sorry, this is yam crop rather. This is wheat. So now, and then the value for yams, right, now forms our base for wheat. And so on and so on. So it doesn't start from everything, all of this doesn't start from 0, right? So each crop forms the base for the next crop. And that's how it goes, and that's how it goes. Here I have normalized it so that we see it in percentages. Let me see. Let's do this. So we see it the way it was initially in our last class. So that's what I said initially about the whole the underlying graph forming the base for the next graph and all of that still works, okay? So as in all the way that a stacked bar chart works, where this is just everything here, the color segmentation just specifies the various crops, and the whole bar gives us the total quantity for this year. Is the same way that this works as well, okay? And so that was it. We were able to, some interesting things we were able to point out. Sugarcane was like is like one of the best performing crops across the various years, right? So that's an interesting point, right? So like I said, you should let your curiosity guide you whenever you are going through the exploration phase of your project. Let your curiosity guide you. Ask questions that you want to know the answer to, and just play around with your data to figure out the answers to that. So now for today, we'll just quickly look at the distribution of the various data. like we want to know, okay, so like how is the total production distributed across the
Apologies for that, guys. I think your tutor is having some technical issues, but I'm sure that she'll be back in record time.
Can you, okay, can you see my screen, guys? I think might have been an issue. Can you see my screen?
No.
Okay. All right. So remember that, I believe you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember that much earlier in our last class, we worked with the 10 years. Okay, we specified our data set, right? We were able to filter out for the last 10 years, right? From 2011 to 2021. And for this now, we're going to be using a box plot to try and understand like the total production across the various years. So here I'm just going to be filtering for the year, the total produced, and the country, right? So and then we're using alter okay. Okay, so remember we used the mark box plot method to generate box plots. Here we specify the year because we want the year to be on the y-axis. Then we specify what we want to be on the y-axis to be the total produced, which we previously calculated. And then we want to differentiate it by the year as well. So we specify the color and then the tooltip so that whenever we hover around our data, we can have access to this information. So if we do this, we can see an interesting, this is me just aiming for the full data set, right? And so we see an interesting array of box plots, right? An interesting chart of box plots. And where we saw some countries where we were able to, in our last data, where we were able to see several countries persist in the last 10 years. This is now giving us a more, an expansive view across the various years. And we're going to get to see, okay, what's like the distribution of these crops, all the crops produced for a particular year. And we see this, remember in a box plot, this represents the median. This represents the third quartile, this represents the first quartile, and this, the end of the whisker, is representing the maximum value. So, and then these are the outliers, right? And so we can see that we can see a pattern to the outliers. We don't get as much outliers in the beginning, at the beginning of our data set, the early years, 1961. But then as we progress, we see that a lot of countries break out of the average production rates, and a lot of countries stay consistently as outliers. So if we look at this, we see Mozambique. We see Mozambique again in the next year. Mozambique again. We see that a lot of countries stay, like I said, they are consistently outliers in across several years, right? So this gives us a clue of of the range of our values, where the range of our values typically fall, and also lets us know, okay, like what countries are the outliers, right, in all of this. So this is one way to look at it. And another thing that we can do, right, having gotten this display of the box plots, one thing that we can do is try to understand, okay, so like we know the outliers, but like what are the countries that fall within this region? That's something that you might want to know. You might want to know, okay, what are the countries that fall below the median or above the median, stuff like that. And so we can pick a year. Here I've picked 2020. So I'm just filtering the data set for years that correspond to 2020. And then we'll go ahead and I'll comment this. Oh, so this is basically plotting this. And then we have this x offset, which will plot it against a random range of values on the x-axis. And then the y will plot the total produced values for the year 2020. So this chart basically will plot, now let me show you what it does. So we basically have these various points represent all the countries, right, with their total produced value, right? The various value points, like for all the countries. And then we get to see we get to see more clearly the ones that are outliers, where they are. We see South Africa, we see um, these other countries, right? We also see the countries that fall within this range, right? We get to see this, we get to inspect this a lot more closely, get to see the countries that are very close to the bottom. So let's see, we see that our median is this value, right? So let's say we want to narrow down and try to figure out where our median is. So we will know that somewhere around here, somewhere at the half of this, right? Somewhere at half of this, right? We know that our values fall. That's where our median is, around there, right? And then we know, okay, these are the countries that fall below that median value. So this is really helpful if you want to do a closer examination of the outliers as well as the values that fall within a specific range in your data set. This is important because, like I said, exploratory analysis, you want to understand, okay, so what are the countries that are producing at the expected rates? And for the countries that are outliers, is this a consistent behavior? So is this or are we seeing something that is being influenced heavily by a specific crop? Those are questions that can arise from this situation. So the next thing we're going to do is, okay, so I have this here where I filtered out for the total produced, the year and the country, and then we run so that we get to see as well that this correlates with the 5 summary like statistics that our box plots typically use. So we see that this relates with this. You can also use this to verify what you've plotted. So now we've looked at distribution of, we took the total produced column, we plotted box plots, right, to understand the distribution across various years. Now we're going to also take a look at the distribution for the various crops, right? We want to know, okay, so like what crops consistently perform the best, right? Like what's the distribution for the various crops? That's something that we want to also figure out. And so here I'm just defining a data frame for that I'll be using. And then I'm dropping the total produced. I think I saw when I was grading you guys' papers, I saw somebody talk about um total produced, the column could not be found. And so I'm not even sure. As part of the challenges that the person faced in the course of doing this, please try and do I don't know, try and you're not, if you're still learning, obviously you're still at the learning stage where you're still getting acquainted with stuff. It's very okay to go to the documentation and check out stuff so that you get an understanding. Or even if the documentation looks too what's too difficult, then browse. There are a couple of resources that have simplified things because what the person should have done is simply to specify the axis. So like if you don't specify the axis, then it's looking within the index, right, for this value that's for this for the value that you have specified here. It's going to look out at the index to match that value and drop that corresponding row, right? But then, I mean, this explains it, right? Specify the axis and then it knows to look among the columns to drop that column. So, okay, moving on quickly. So yeah, we go ahead and I talked about this in the last class, right? Where I want to convert this to a form that we can easily use, right? I want to, where we had, let's see. Where we had all of the crops as our columns, we want to convert that and have them into one column, right? So that's basically what this is doing. You can run this and see. Okay, and then remember we said that we want to see distribution of the various crops. So next thing we are doing is to group by the country and the crop, and then we'll take the mean of, because we just want like um, one value per country kind of thing. So we'll now take the value for, we'll take the mean of the value for, after we've done the grouping. So this is, if I do this, let's do this first. And then let's see. Okay. So we'll run this again. And we'll run this. See, now we've grouped by crops, gone ahead to group by country. So this takes care of the, so now what we were aggregating like the various crops by country. So eliminates the splitting down by years that we were doing before. So this just gives me all the years aggregated, like giving us the sum, right, per country. So now we'll go ahead and reset index because we want to turn this back into, we want to get rid of the multi-index and keep this as a data frame with a single index. So, Okay, so it's looking good. And then we'll go ahead and do our box plots. I'll quickly explain what this is doing. So we have specified our x-axis to be our crops, right? And then the value of the crops, and then we want to see the splitting by crops, right? So that's why we have to specify the color as well. And so then this to move around this. So this is, okay, let's take this out first. And then you see something interesting. You see that this is so far down that we can't even see what's going on. And yet, see the distribution of sugarcane almost reaching 50 million, right? So like, and then the outliers, these are the countries that have Mozambique, Morocco, sugarcane. Okay, we saw Reunion. Wow. We didn't drop Reunion at the start of that's interesting. Okay, I thought we did. I remember someone pointed that out, and I think we did. Okay, so we have Reunion. We still have Reunion here. I think we can drop this as is. I think this should work. Okay. So let's see. Okay, all right then. So this is how we'll drop this, but then we'll specify in place that we want it to be. All right, so this is it. So it was. So now that takes our shape from. We didn't get to see the shape at the start of this. So 2947. Let's see if we have our data frame shape at some point here. Probably took it out. Okay, but yeah, okay. So we see that we've dropped a good number about this is down to 297 something, about 20 something rows have been dropped. Okay, so that has definitely influenced the data that we have been working with so far. So when I share the notebook with you guys, I would encourage that you go ahead and take care of that as you're working through this, right? So before you run all of this, drop the reunion column, and then before you proceed with the rest of the analysis you're doing. Okay, so going forward, moving forward, we will go back to what we were doing. So where we were trying to get this, but first we'll need to run this. Okay. So we see all the outliers that are here. We even see Somalia as an outlier in the production of apples. That's something that we didn't see when we did a general overview of total production of the various crops. So this is one advantage of digging deep, right? Excuse me. You get to see the behavior of a lot of other countries that you wouldn't see from a general point of view. So now we see this behavior for the yams, and we see potatoes having an interesting number of outliers, and we can decide to um, go deeper into this, wondering why this is not highlighting the values. Run this again. Okay, so this is Sudan. We see Central African Republic, Djibouti, we see Ghana, we see Eswatini, and all the rest of the countries that we can decide to go ahead. This is actually a large data set, and this is why when with data analysis and data visualization, it's important to come in with a problem that you are trying to solve, because there's so much to explore there can be so much to explore in your data. So it's very helpful if you have a problem that you're already trying to identify. And so you are just asking questions that can lead you and help you to answer the initial problem that you want to solve. So I'm just going to do this as well for avocados, right? Let's take a look at avocados. We see an interesting, okay, let's scale this up. So for avocados, we see an interesting list of, right? We see Libya, we see Ethiopia, and some other ones. So it would be a good idea to go ahead and get to know more about how the data points fall within for just now. I have done a general overview. Now I'm narrowing it down. I just want to look at avocados and get to understand how the data points fall for the very, like across a certain range, right? So that's what this is doing. I've also scaled this up a bit so that we get to see the various values as well. So it's also, we can also decide to dig deeper into our data set. Like I said, you can decide to be specific. You can decide that, oh, I'm not very interested in the rest of the African countries. I just want to know what's the behavior for Nigeria. I want to know what patterns I can find for Nigeria. So I filter for Nigeria here. And then I try to understand the relationship between various crops in Nigeria, right? So if I do this, so if I do this as well, okay, and I just want to get a sense of, I want to get a sense of relationships between like the various crops. Like, is there any form of relationship? Is there Is there no relationship? Doesn't appear to be any clear relationship between maize and pears. You are right. So I can go ahead and explore this for some other ones. Go ahead. Okay. Able to determine data type. Sunflower seed. Okay, there's a spacing here. What I'll just do is I'll correct it. So let's say okay. So I think this works. Mm. Okay. So we don't really see a pattern to we don't really see a pattern that we can get off on, right, to this. Any necessary relationship between, so I need to label this properly. Any relationship that we can really work with, right? So further analysis that can be done on these data sets, right, would be to be able to get perhaps the GDP of several countries. Here's the GDP of several of the countries that are listed here, and try to understand if there's any form of correlation between like the total production, any form of correlation between the production across the various years and the GDP of the nations across the various years as well. Those are some things that you can do with these data sets, right? And I couldn't get supply data set for this. It would have also been an interesting thing to know if there's what's the typical behavior, right, between the production rate and the supply rate. So those are some further analysis that you can do. I understand that you're going to be working for your project, you're going to be working on this data set. I had suggested that in the last project, I had suggested that you try out your hands with other websites for scraping. But literally almost everybody, very few, maybe one or two people tried out other websites and didn't even complete it, but then E for effort, I guess. So, but um for a lot of you, you decided to use the Yahoo Finance website. But then one thing I want to point out is that if you don't appreciate or understand the analysis that you're doing, you're not going to be able to communicate it to someone else. So that's why it needs to start from a question you are curious about. What is the behavior of this? what is this behavior in this data set? What is this? And that's a very good starting point for your analysis. And from there, you're going to be able to build up and all of that. So I'll be stopping here for today's class so that I can share, I can have enough time to figure out sharing out this notebook with you guys. Okay. Do we have any questions? Do we have any questions? I'm not hearing any questions. I'm not hearing any responses from the chats. Is there anything that you guys would like? So we have one more class left. Is there anything that you would like for us to narrow down on for the next class? Any areas of confusion, anything that you want us so far? What we've done in stage C and stage D being this one, is there anything that you would want us to revisit in our next class? Hello, guys. Maybe I need to say that we'll give marks for responsiveness. Extra marks for responsiveness.
Okay. Hello, ma.
Yes, because I said extra marks for responsiveness.
No, I
Okay,
had to think back. Okay, while doing the stage C task, while I was plotting my graphs, I had an issue with flipping a graph. When I plotted it, it was upside down for some reason. So I tried the rotate code, but it kept on, it didn't change the graph. The graph was upside down. So I don't know if there's a particular um addition to add to the code to
which
flip
graph
the
is that?
graph.
What graph are you plotting?
Okay, I was plotting
What
I
code?
think C1. C1. Yes.
Yes, what chart exactly?
A box plot, a box graph. That's a bar chart, yeah, a bar chart.
Okay, you said a box plot. You mean bar charts, right? Not
Yes,
box
a bar
plot.
chart. Yes, a bar chart. I did the whole
Okay.
figure this thing to code. It still didn't work.
Okay, I think with Seaborn, you need to specify the X and the Y axis. So
Yes, ma, I did
depending on
that.
what you specify as your X, yes, depending on what you specify as your, did you switch the axis, what you
Yes,
have
I
for
changed
your
them.
X versus what you have?
Yes, yes, but I kept
Okay,
getting upside
just,
down.
all right then, share a screenshot of your code in the Slack channel, and then we'll pick it up from there. Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Emmanuel, okay, you're asking, can we scrape email addresses from websites? What websites are you considering scraping email addresses from, please? I mean, if it's accessible, if it's accessible to the general public, then yes, you can scrape. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now, for everybody that's currently in this class, go to your Slack channel. I'm dropping the notebook there. And by the end of this class, I am deleting it. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So to answer your question, right, can you extract email address? I mean, I don't think that websites would want to display email addresses of their users like that. It's sensitive information, and so it's not going to be displayed for you to get access to, right? So because they know that people are out here looking for who to scam, right? So and users that register their emails with websites or do some registration with their emails or whatever. It's a form of trust, right? So I don't think it's going to be it's not going to be accessible to you, to any other person other than that user. So yeah, I don't think that extracting email addresses from websites is something that can happen. I mean, any website that just displays users' email should not be trusted, to be honest. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes, good evening.
Please can you explain how to go about this project, this state product, ma'am? Like which data are we using, ma'am? And the data you sent on
Okay,
the data you sent on the Slack is not actually complete.
okay, what's missing? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, ma'am. I think someone complained on the
Yes, I
group.
was asking.
We only have year and country, year and value there. That's
Yes.
and the other one we have country items and value. That's what we have.
Okay, so I did say that this is for practice, right? The data set you are using is not going to influence any major decision in the world currently. It's more of a practice data set for you to build your skills. So one thing that you need to take into consideration is that there is a possibility that the source of the data might not be the most accurate, right? So, but the supply data set is just meant to supplement the production and is meant to account for like total supply for a particular year, as opposed to like supply for individual crops. I think I addressed that in the question that was asked. So I hope that helps. For some reason, I
Hello,
can't
ma'am.
access. Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, so I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so for the project that we are supposed to do for this stage, there is also another that says, apart from the African food production and African food supply that was provided in the practice, like just to learn. But in the project, they put production and also supply. I am not sure if it's the same as the African owned, but I'm not able to access it. So it's asking for it's also like a Wolfram. I don't know, the data set is on Wolfram, but I can't access it. So I don't even know if it's the same with that one that was given in practice. So because they give like two different data sets for the project also.
Okay. So I'm saying I think we've addressed this. Just to be clear, right? I've dropped the data set for practice in the Slack channel. So please, I don't know, have you seen the one that I dropped in the Slack channel?
Yes, I've seen the one
Who
you
has-
dropped and I've downloaded with
Okay, so what's the challenge?
there's another one
That's the one for practice.
for the project in the project what is on an instruction. They gave, and I don't know if
It's
it's
the
the same.
same. No.
Oh,
It's
okay,
the
okay.
same one. It's the same one. You're meant to expand on it. So that's
Okay,
why I
okay, thank you.
decided not to use that data set. Yes. So please expand on it using what you've been given here. So I've dropped, I have a bit of lagging network, but I have dropped it on the Slack channel and in In 5 minutes, I'll take it out. Okay. So please, thank you guys for coming to today's session. Have a lovely day, everyone.
Hello, ma.